You know, some life stories are so wild, they just don't seem real. Today, we're diving into the life of a man who didn't just have one story, but what feels like a whole library of them. We're talking about the Danish explorer, author, and all-around adventurer, Peter Freuchen. Okay, so where do you even begin with a guy like this? Well, let's just jump right into the deep end with the story he's most famous for. It's a tale of survival so extreme, it perfectly sets the stage for the kind of person we're about to meet.
You heard that correctly. The man was trapped under a mountain of snow and ice, basically buried alive with no tools. So what does he do? Well, he freezes his own poop into a blade and literally chisels himself out. I mean, that one story tells you everything you need to know about Peter Freuchen. Impossibly tough, endlessly resourceful, and maybe, just maybe, an incredible storyteller.
But that wild story, that's just the tip of the iceberg, no pun intended. So who was this giant of a man? And how did he even get into a situation like that in the first place? You'd think a guy like this was born in a blizzard, right? Nope. His journey actually started on a much more conventional path. A path he dramatically bailed on for a life of ice, danger, and pure adventure. Believe it or not, Freuchen was on track to become a doctor, but the call of the wild was just too strong. In 1906, he straight up dropped out of university and took off for Greenland. And this wasn't just some gap year, this was a total life change. Only 4 years later, he co-founded the Thule Trading Station, which was basically the most northern trading post on the entire planet. And that trading post became the home base for the legendary Thule expeditions. These were just about planting flags and mapping out empty space. No, they were these deep, immersive studies of geography, anthropology, and especially the culture of the Inuit people, who Freuchen would build a deep, lifelong connection with. And just to give you an idea of how intense these trips were, the very first Thule expedition was a 1,000-kilometer journey across the Greenland ice sheet. A brutal trek that almost killed them and pretty much immediately cemented their reputations as some of the toughest explorers on Earth. But here's what set Freuchen apart. He didn't just visit the Arctic. He moved in. He truly immersed himself in the Inuit way of life, and that led to some of the most important relationships he would ever have. He fell in love with and married an Inuk woman, Navarana. They built a life together and had 2 kids, a son, Makusak, and a daughter, Pipaluk. He learned the language, he mastered their survival skills, he lived as one of them. And this story, man, it really shows his fierce loyalty. Navarana tragically died during the Spanish flu epidemic, but when the local Christian missionaries refused to let her be buried in their cemetery because she hadn't been baptized, Freuchen was furious. He completely defied them and buried the love of his life himself right there in the frozen earth. Living in the Arctic was a constant battle for survival. On one expedition, his foot got so badly frostbitten that gangrene started to set in. To stop it from spreading, he had to amputate his own toes with a pair of pliers and no anesthetic. He would eventually lose the whole foot. So you'd think, okay, the guy loses a foot. Maybe it's time to slow down, write a memoir, take it easy. No, not Peter Freuchen. For him, this was just the beginning of like 4 more entirely new lives. Seriously, after he returned to Denmark, his life just exploded in a dozen new directions. He wrote over 30 books, he consulted on Hollywood movies about the Arctic, and he even became a war hero. During World War II, this one-footed explorer became a key player in the Danish resistance. He hated Nazism so much that whenever he ran into someone spouting anti-Semitic garbage, he would stand up to his full 6'7" height and just declare that he was Jewish, even though he wasn't, just to confront them. He was eventually captured by the Germans and sentenced to death, but in classic Freuchen style, he managed an impossible escape to Sweden. After the war, he married the Danish fashion illustrator Dagmar Kohn and moved to New York City. Can you picture it? The rugged Arctic explorer was now this sophisticated, cosmopolitan figure, just as comfortable in the wilds of Greenland as he was in the high society circles of Manhattan. And just when you think this story cannot get any more surprising, it does. In the 1950s, Peter Freuchen became a full-blown celebrity in America by winning a TV quiz show called The $64,000 Question. His expert category? The 7 C's. Of course it was. He won the whole thing, a prize worth over $500,000 in today's money. So how do you even cap off a life like that? Well, for Peter Freuchen, the end of his story had to be tied to its beginning, the Arctic.
He passed away from a heart attack in 1957 while on location in Alaska for a film project. Just as he wished, his ashes were flown back to Greenland and scattered over Mount Dundas, that iconic mountain overlooking Thule, the home he had built so many years before.
And back in his Danish hometown, there's this plaque. It's a simple, quiet little tribute to their most famous son. It's almost funny how understated it is compared to the absolutely thunderous life the man actually lived. His legacy is literally carved into the map of the world, with entire regions of Greenland named after him and his wife, Navarona. But maybe the most powerful part of his legacy is carried on through his family. His grandson, Peter Freuchen, grew up to become the very first Inuit ever elected to Canada's parliament, carrying forward that spirit of leadership and adventure. The story of Peter Freuchen is a powerful reminder that a single life can hold countless different adventures, careers, and transformations. His absolute refusal to be defined by any one thing kind of leaves you with a big question to chew on, doesn't it?